let's go for the explanation of the fundamentals of urban resilience. I will try to be very brief because this part of the training is mainly an introduction to what Dimitri is going to explain later on about urban economic resilience. Resilience appears to be a difficult concept, but indeed it's not that difficult. It's a bit complex. This is true because it has to do with other different matters. As you see in the screen, resilience has to do with everything that is related with reducing risk. And we can see now more than ever in this context of COVID. Some of you were talking about green recoveries. Of course, we are not going to be resilient if we don't think in climate. So climate action should be there. As Gulnara was explaining at the very beginning, people in vulnerable situations are at the center of all our work. So, of course, resilience is a concept that has to do with social action, and every measure we are going to undertake as for resilience has to do sustainable. As our Secretary General has stated in several occasions, also resilience wants to be the nexus between the humanitarian and development works that, at least so far, have been a bit disconnected. So this is also other of the aims of this concept of this work in cities. Next slide, please. We are facing now several urban challenges. Only just for you to have some figures about some of them. Of course, all of you know that the world is urban and it's going to be more and more urban. So by 2050, we expect the 80% of the world to be urban. Now, 55% of the world's population is living in cities, but it's the 80% of the GDP what cities generate. About climate change, you can see there that 90% of all urban areas are coastal. This means that some of our shocks the cities are facing are related with water, flooding, sea level rise, powerful storms, etc. And we cannot forget the key issue of infrastructure. We need to invest in infrastructure, but it's not only about infrastructure, it's about the infrastructure the world needs today that must be climate resilient and low emissions.
Today, our cities and their inhabitants are facing new and amplified challenges as a result of rapid urbanization, a change in climate, and social instability. From earthquakes to flooding, rapid immigration to cyber attacks, all cities face a range of shocks and stresses, natural and human-made. Unplanned cities are, however, more vulnerable as they often suffer from pre-existing stresses or fall victim to cascading shocks. A resilient city assesses, plans, and acts to prepare for and respond to hazards, natural and human-made, sudden and slow onset, expected and unexpected. What's more, resilient cities are better able to protect and enhance people's lives, secure development gains, foster an investable environment, and drive positive change. Resilience concentrates on how individuals, communities, and business not only cope in the face of multiple shocks and stresses, but also find opportunities for transformational development.
So our challenges, as we have been talking before, are the rapid growth in cities, of course, climate change and COVID. but also the need of engagement with the stakeholders and the need of strengthening the local government capacities. That is precisely what we are here doing today all together. So as you have seen in the video, a resilient city is a city that plans and acts and is ready to respond to any hazard or stress, and always protecting and enhancing people's lives. So our executive director, together with the UN Habitat team, has been working all the year with this problem of COVID in cities. Just a figure, 95% of all the cases that have been confirmed in urban areas. So really the urban areas are at the epicenter of this pandemic. Our commitments, of course, we always are talking about the 2030 agenda, and we always think in the SDGs, the 11 SDGs, as you know, is at the center of our work. But it's not only about SDGs. When we talk about climate, we have to go to Paris and the other climate summits. When we talk about risk reduction, we need to think about Sendai framework. We will go later on a bit in the content of these frameworks. As we are working in urban areas, and our mandate as UN Habitat is to work with the new urban agenda. And now we have the UN framework for the immediate socioeconomic response for COVID-19, and of course, humanitarian summits and Addis Ababa agreements that are there to work with the emerging countries. All these frameworks are available, and we will place in our webpage, in the webpage of the project, some information related to this. Also, I want to ask all of you, in case you think you need more information, a specific guide, something that we could provide, you please tell us, and we will place all this information in the project website. So what is urban resilience? Resilience is a capacity. It must be measurable. Because of this, we have to work with all these indicators, because we need to measure, we need to tackle, and we need to monitor the capacity of the city. We are always talking about systemic approach. What does it mean? That almost everything is related with everything. So we need to understand the nodes and the interlinks among the pieces of this puzzle that the city is. All of us have been talking today about inhabitants, so beyond citizens, because you know that sometimes not all the people that are in the city with us are citizens, but we have to think in everyone and beyond everything in the people in vulnerable situations. So resilience is mainly about maintaining continuity through shocks and stresses. A COVID is a shock, is something that could happen or not, but the city has to be ready for this kind of issues. Stress is something that is ongoing in the city through time, but when a shock and a stress come together, so a city that is fragile from economic perspective, and then has to face a problem with COVID, they worsen each other. So we have to work with the two concepts, the external threat, the shock, and the internal dysfunctionality of the city that we consider that is stress. And of course, we have to think in sustainability. So as I was telling before, resilience is the nexus between the humanitarian and development world. So we have to think in reducing risk, but also in working towards sustainability. In resilience, we have 6 characteristics and 5 principles. So there is a small guide, very, very brief, that we will place also in the project website for you to go in depth if you are more interested. So just I will explain a bit the 6 characteristics: persistent, adaptable, and inclusive. So a city to be resilient must be robust, must be flexible to absorb all these disturbances, and of course has to be inclusive, because we are talking about people and people in vulnerable situations. How are we going to get to resilience? So through integration, not only between services, but among people, stakeholders, institutions, with lessons learned. We had to reflect and we had to learn about our own mistakes, and share experiences. That is what we are doing today together, and always to think in transforming, as some of you were explaining in the Mentimeter exercises. So how cities are going to transform themselves in a positive way, as for a better future. The urban elements, I think this slide is important, because when we think in urban settings, sometimes we forget certain matters. We always think in built environment or in infrastructure, but a city is also related with supply chain, and mobility used to be there. But what about municipal public services? That is precisely something that local governments are in charge of, and social inclusion and protection measures that usually comes with a shared responsibility between national and local governments. And of course, the economy and ecology angle are essential to understand cities. About the principles, we used to work with 5 principles. The most important is the first, dynamic nature of urban resilience. You can be resilient today and not be resilient tomorrow. So this is not only about undertaking certain measures now, but maintaining these measures for the future. The systemic approach, as you see in the scheme, almost everything is related to everything. But we need really to tackle how they are related and what's the importance of the nodes and also of the linkage. Principle 3, the need of promoting participation in planning and governance. That is totally related with the need of multi-stakeholder engagement. So not only public institutions, national, regional, local, but also private sector, SMEs and big companies, academia, and civil society, from local communities to NGOs. Of course, the 5th one is again something that has to do with the international agenda. As you know, the SDG 11 is the one that is at the center of our work, and next slide, please. And I want also to briefly explain a bit the Sendai Disaster Risk Reduction Framework, if you don't know yet. It has 7 global targets: reducing mortality, reducing affected people by disasters, reducing economic loss, reducing damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services, and increasing countries with national and local DRR, so disaster risk reduction strategies, increasing international cooperation to developing countries, and increasing the availability and access to early warning systems and disaster risk measures. Paris COP21, I think you know already the basics of this agreement. Important from my side is to point out that if you see the scheme and the numbers, the percentages, you can see that cities are all over. So you can find cities in the energy, you can find cities in industrial production, in everything that has to do with ecosystem services and forest and agriculture, with logistics, of course, buildings and water facilities. So cities are all over. And the new urban agenda, I invite you, if you don't know yet this document, to read it. Again, it's a very, very brief document written in a very easy way. So you have this new urban agenda in almost all the languages. And the key principles and commitments are three. Of course, leave no one behind, this mantra once and again. Ensure sustainable and inclusive urban economies, and ensure environmental sustainability. If you are interested in the new urban agenda specifically, from UN Habitat, there is a course. So you have there the link. We will also share in the project website for you to go in depth in the new urban agenda basics. And about urban economic resilience, once that we have gone briefly through the fundamentals of urban resilience, you know much better than us how COVID is impacting in cities, and we have already talked about these figures: GDPs, people living in cities, cases confirmed in urban areas. We have in the UN framework for socioeconomic response that has these 5 main points with the building back better principle. So health first, social protection and inclusion again, so protecting people and enhancing people's lives. The economic angle of the response and the recovery from the micro, and the macro economic response and multilateral collaboration, and social cohesion and community resilience. Some of you were talking in the Mentimeter exercise about green recovery. So circular economy principles should be in all the plans that we have that we are thinking today for our cities. We need to shift from this linear way of thinking in development and we need to think in a circular way in which the waste of one process is the nurture of the following one. Urban economic resilience is again a capacity, and is related with capabilities of urban communities to plan and to anticipate, so to get to be ready for negative shocks, including long-term stresses. In this case, focusing in economies, reallocating and mobilizing resources to withstand those shocks and recover from those shocks. So it's not only be ready, but also being able to recover and building back better, placing their economies on the path to sustainable development while strengthening the capacity to deal with any further shock. Urban economy resilience has 4 main dimensions. Some of you have already been working with our questionnaire, so you know these big chapters. Business environment, labor market conditions, financial environment, and economic governance. So if we go through business environment, we will find big matters as industry concentration, of course, supply chains, market orientation, technology, innovation. If we think in labor market conditions, we are talking about the labor market regulations, the potential wakes and working hours, possibilities to get another job, social security mechanism, etc. Financial environment, it's about debt markets, equity markets, government financing, and economic governance. It's about how easy is doing a business, how resilient you can plan your business development, and it's about leadership and macroeconomic. If we if we see now the next slide, we can see that in the center of these big 4 dimensions, now we can find the need of infrastructure and connectivity. And some of you were also very interested in the Mentimeter about the experiences from other cities. We are here today to share also these experiences. You know that within the project, we have a compendium that will be available after the second workshop. So all the case studies and experiences, very brief explained today, you will find in the global compendium. So the idea now is to share a bit what we have learned from the questionnaire and also the first insights of what you are going to find in the global compendium. So important figures: 55% of respondent cities did not have an emergency response plan. There have been some delays in providing economic support to people in vulnerable situations. And many cities still have not developed any mid to long-term measures or strategies. So we need to work towards it today. You can see there the graphics. If you remember the colors of the previous slide, you will see that you can see the answers with the color of different regions. 65% of responders think the central government is playing a major role, while around 60% of respondents think that local government is playing the leading role in providing direct assistance. So while the central government is playing a major role in addressing financial aspects, is local government the one that is playing a leading role in providing direct assistance according to the answers. This emphasizes the importance of close collaboration between all the levels of administrations. About the 4 big dimensions that we were talking before, you can see that there are quite positive answers about the regulation of working conditions in compliance with the COVID-19 in labor markets, and also provision of PPEs and dissemination of relevant health information to workers, and activation of social protection measures, together with the collection of related data, something that we are going to do also with the diagnostic tool. While there are other chapters that are still just with 50%, 30% of percentage of completion. With regards to business environment, we find the most positive answers in relief measures for businesses, and also in maintenance and disinfection of public spaces, together with targeted support in the form of grants and again, collection of data. While there are another points and other items as provision of free of subsidized inputs to critical businesses that are not so well. So it's only a 50% of the percentage, number 5. With regards to financial environment, most positive answers are related with the support and promotion of mobile money, digital financial transactions, and also the establishment of public facilities to provide and facilitate access to cheap capital. But well, there are other items, as for instance, the third one, support to non-deposit microfinance institutions that is not so well developed. Yes, 35% of percentages. Economic governance, establishment of institutional structures to manage the economic impacts and accelerate recovery, around 80% of answers. Also, adoption and revision of policies and regulations to strengthen the city's disaster response capacity is something that we are doing also today, around 80% of answers. while the adoption or revision of city development plans and collection of related data are around 50 or 55%. And about local government business continuity, the most positive answers are related to the provision again of PPEs and restructuring of assistance services to reduce health crises or health risks, restructuring the source revenue arrangements to mobilize additional resources, number 5. And while, well, other items as 11 or 12 that you can see in the screen are not so well developed yet. So big figures and key findings. Measures taken by majority of cities are focusing on managing the health-related aspect. As Esteban was explaining at the very beginning, this has begun with health issues, but now we are entering in the economic, well, we have entered in the economic big crash. Comparatively, less city levels responses implemented are related to financial environment. So you have there the big figures of percentages and matters. And about the compendium and the practices from cities, you already know the structure of our case studies. Each city will have a city snapshot, brief description of the COVID-19 situation, main dimensions of urban economic resilience, again, labor markets, business environment, financial environment, and economic governance. Some explanations about the measures the city has undertaken as for crisis response and recovery, and the practices that the city wants to highlight, either if the city has already undertaken these practices or measures or is aiming to do it. And practices from cities, some examples about community engagement and collaborative governance. The city of Harare have partnered with Oxfam, and they have engaged community networks of women, activities on a cash for work basis, working in community decontamination activities. This is an example. About leadership, we have the example of Barcelona. In Barcelona, it was formed a coordination center for the economic response that we call CECORE, and a pact in the early stage of the crisis to bring together a diverse array of commitments to enhance the resilience and sustainable urban model of the city. And you can see that they are now undertaking and expanding all these early measures. So this points out the need of beginning from the very beginning with the envisioned solutions for the measures for within a crisis. About the territorial approach, it's important to point out for instance, experience of Lima, that has identified geographic pockets of vulnerability thanks to geospatial analysis. So focusing in these pockets of people in vulnerable situations, they are also enhancing the resilience of the entire city. Smart public financial management, we have several examples related to this. The city of Subang Jaya reduced its administrative expenditure by 20% by introducing a financial backup plan, and they reserved 4 months of expenses and launched a program to enhance local revenues. You have several experiences like that, but it's quite effective. About, again, the use of digital tools, in this case related with big data. In Kharkiv, 5 public utility companies transitioned to an e-document management system, and it minimizes physical interaction and improved transparency. In the city of Accra, they invested in some e-revenue collection systems as Subanjaja, and also introduced e-licensing of businesses, which makes things easier. About continuity of public services, remember that resilience has to do with the maintenance of the continuity despite all the shocks and stresses. Tirana extended PD public transport provisions for medical staff and work with exemptions in public transport operators between March and December. So with this, they ensured the adequate public transportation capacity. About informality and livelihoods, if we think always in the people that are in the most vulnerable situations, the city of Accra performs disinfection not only in formal markets but also in informal ones, and equip them with hand washing, station for vendors, customers, etc. And they have introduced physical spacing arrangements as also Bishkek, Lima, or Subanjaja. About the inclusive redistribution policies and effective safety, Alexandria Energy launched the Support Daily Workers Initiative. So they distributed food rations to over 140,000 daily laborers, and in Bishkek, a similar figure, a bit higher, for vulnerable residents receiving food rations. So the activation of all these schemes for distributions, not only financial, are very important to manage the situation from the very beginning. So key lessons: it's needed an effective, inclusive, and participatory governance. Partnerships between all the institutions related with the governance of the local of the urban settings are needed. We need to relay in service delivery from local government and private sector. Infrastructure must be resilient, climate resilient, and low emissions. We need a robust public financial management systems and a close engagement with private sector, formal and informal. We need to begin to think now in how we are going to plan the cities, our cities for the future. And once and again, this mantra that leaving no one behind.